AVAIYA has changed my life.
AVAIYA has made me the woman I am today.
AVAIYA is my home.
AVAIYA is personal freedom.
AVAIYA is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about AVAIYA.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, AVAIYA, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.
Hello, AVAIYA family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner, Ike Allen, and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of AVAIYA University. AVAIYA is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Rebecca Zung, is back with us today to talk about 3 tricks to having tough talks with toxic people. Rebecca is a narcissism negotiation expert and one of the top 1% of attorneys in the nation. She is also a best-selling author, and her perspectives are in high demand by television and print outlets. Welcome back to AVAIYA, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It is always a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, right back at you. I'm excited about your topic today. This is intriguing. So let's first talk, what are the first 3 steps people should be aware of if they're starting to think about how to shift the communication dynamic with toxic people?
Yeah, so the way I think about it when they're starting to shift that dynamic is just stopping, because when people are in a relationship with a toxic person, the first thing that they need to think about is the fact that they've been conditioned by this toxic person. Because when they have been love bombed by this toxic person, that whole love bombing process is actually a conditioning process. The really being set up. I know that kind of sounds awful and icky, but it's really a conditioning process that's been happening so that they can really get supply from that person.
Mm-hmm.
And during that conditioning process, they are sort of being programmed to think that the other person is so smart, to think that the other person is, you know, the better one. And I can just tell you from having done divorce law for so long that there's so many times that the person who's been the victim or the target of this abusive person, they come into my office and they go, "Oh, you're in for it. They're way smarter. They're way more, you know, they're better at snowing people. They're so charming." And I think to myself, wow, you know, they really have been conditioned by this person to believe that that's true, because it's not necessarily true, but that's how they've been conditioned. And so the first steps are really just to stop that conditioning process. So the way I look at it is just to kind of stop the conditioning, and then you stop, and then you're almost okay, stop, and then you kind of start stepping forward, and then you can actually start talking, and then you can actually start, you know, maybe negotiating, and actually start moving forward, and actually start becoming more powerful. And that's kind of how you start shifting the dynamic. But the first step is to actually just stop, because before that, you're kind of like retreating, and you feel like you're constantly on the defensive all the time. And that's really just your way of being. And I feel like, having represented people who've been victims of narcissists, that, you know, the first thing I ask them is like, what do you want? a lot of times. And in my SLAY program, you know, the first thing I tell people to do is create your vision, you know, where it is that you want to go. Like a lot of times I'll say to people, what is the outcome that you want? What's your ideal, you know, situation with your kids? If you, you know, want custody, or, you know, what's your ideal parenting plan? Or if you want alimony, or you want, you know, whatever it is that you want, what is your ideal? They don't even have an answer sometimes because they've been on the defensive for so long that they actually haven't thought about that. Right. You know, like, so they've just been constantly like, what is it that they're doing? And what do I have to think next? And how do I get out of this? And oh my God, they showed up at the school, and oh my God, I have to respond to this letter now. And oh my God, they're at my house, and this email came in, and this text came in, and they're literally like a turtle on their back all the time. And so just to stop being on the defensive is the first step. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I say step one is to just stop.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not something like you always would naturally maybe think about, because if you get so used to, like you said, that conditioning or that like continuous defensive response, then your mind doesn't necessarily have room to think about, oh, what's my future look like and all of that stuff. So I love it. So, okay. So that's the first step. Are two other steps you wanted to talk about with that?
Well, so with each step, there's going to be things that you're going to do when there's the 3 tricks for having tough talks with toxic people. And I'll go into what you're going to do at each step, but, you know, it's stop and then start moving forward and then start talking. And then, I'll talk about what you do at each step, but stop, move forward, then speak. Mm-hmm. And then at each step, I'll talk about what you do at each step.
Okay. So let's talk about, so we have the kind of basic framework of those steps. So what about the tricks? What's the first trick?
Yeah. So the first trick at the stop is just creating strong boundaries. And just even that sometimes will give people heart palpitations, honest to God, because that is the last thing that narcissists or toxic people want. They will absolutely go bananas if you create boundaries, because they don't want you to have boundaries. They want you to, they believe that you are a possession. And they see you as their possession. They see you as a form of supply. And during that devalue stage, by the way, what I say is that they will swap forms of supply for you. And that's why your cases don't get settled. So if you're not going to be giving them supply in the form of adulation, or in the form of doing things for them, or giving them money, or giving them sex, or giving them whatever it is that you were giving them during the relationship, then they're going to swap the form of supply that they were giving you by getting supply out of you by manipulating you, making your life miserable, controlling you. They get supply from that. Mm-hmm. That's why they don't let you go. That's why people make the mistake of thinking, what is it that they want? I'll just give it to them and I'll be done.
Right.
They don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They get supply from making you miserable.
Right.
They don't want to just win. They continue to get supply. They want the supply. That's what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to figure out how to get them to let go of that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like, right, the flipping of that supply to if they're not going to get it in a certain way, then they shift into something, right, even worse, it sounds like. So like, what does one do in that kind of scenario to be able to, I guess, communicate / not allow that supply to keep, sucking away at their life?
Yeah, well, that's in my slave program, which is you have to figure out a form of supply that's going to be more important for them to keep than the supply that they get from jerking you around, which is always going to be a higher form of supply, which is always going to be how they look. And you have to threaten that source of supply. And if they feel like that form of supply is going to be threatened, then they'll have to let go of the supply that they get from jerking you around.
Okay. Yeah. The image in the outside world, right? What other people think of them and all of that. Interesting.
Correct. Yeah. Right. And that's why, I teach people how to create a strategy and a leverage that's what I teach people how to do in the slave program. Yeah.
And so, okay. So what's trick number 2?
Yeah. So trick number 2, and by the way, in the boundaries section, I teach people, how to actually create boundaries. And I just before we leave the boundaries section, I want to just kind of mention something a little bit more about boundaries, because narcissists are like 2-year-olds in adult bodies. Okay. And so they're not going to be happy that you're putting down boundaries. And so they're going to have a bit of a tantrum about it. And so they will, you just kind of have to get through that stage. It's sort of like when a 2-year-old, doesn't get their way, they just cry louder and cry longer. And so they just feel like, oh, I just have to cry louder and cry longer, and then I'll get my way. And so when you start putting down boundaries, that narcissistic rage kind of maybe gets triggered, and they start to blow up your phone. They start to maybe try to guilt you, things start happening. And you just kind of got to get through that stage, and just hold fast to your boundaries, because it's for your own good. So just be okay with that.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. So that's, the first step in creating that, making sure that you are being true to yourself. So that's the stop.
Right.
Okay. All right. So then the second step is now you're starting to move forward a little bit, right? And so the second step is maybe having some brief interactions. Okay. So brief interactions is the second B. So I call it the 3 B's. So boundaries and then brief. So you're moving forward slightly. And now you're step 2. And this is all like the final goal here is, where you're picturing a day, hopefully in a not so distant future, where you are the one controlling the conversations with the toxic people, and you're the one driving the outcomes. And it's actually very, very possible. And I say to people all the time that you're actually the stronger one. The not so secret is that you're actually the stronger one. They're actually really scared little people deep down inside,
Yeah.
So keeping the interactions super brief. And there are a number of ways to do that. One of the ways that I say to do that is, for example, if they send you a really long, super toxic email, which is super designed to trigger you. It could be a text, and they know how to trigger you, by the way.
Right.
You are a deadbeat person, you're a crap mom, or you are they know exactly what to say to get under your skin, right? The real thing that, you're a drug addict or, whatever. And you're like, excuse me, like I've never even smoked pot, like whatever. And, you want to like fly back and respond point by point by point by point. Like, do not defend yourself. Do not do that. So what I always say is like, there's probably one line in there of something you have to like respond to, like what time to exchange your child or something. And all the rest of it is just a bunch of crap, right? So you just say, I'm in receipt of your email. I deny your allegations, and you can pick up Johnny at 3 p.m. on Wednesday.
Right.
That's all you need to say. Like, you don't need to go into every single thing. And that's it. You don't need to go everything point by point by point. I know you want to, but like, you just don't have to. Don't get down in the weeds. Don't get down in the mud with them. Because that's what they want. That gives them supply.
Right. Yeah. Hence the second step, right? Because we've moved beyond the stopping part. So, right, you're not going to be defensive in the second step as you move forward, because really probably such a waste of your own energy and time to get all defensive. I love like how you laid out the response to the email. That's great.
Yeah. And another way to be brief that I tell people is to, like, if you have to have a conversation with them, like, have an agenda. Like, okay, we'll talk on Wednesday, but we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk for this amount of time. Right. And that's it. We're not going to go beyond this, and we're not going to go beyond this time frame, because like, that's it. And that makes you feel like psychologically better about what we're going to talk about and for how long, so that you don't feel like you're going to walk into, I'm going to get ambushed, and it's going to be, I'm going to get attacked about all these horrible things, right?
Yeah.
We can talk about this topic, and that's it. Beyond that, I got to go to work. I'm going to take a shower, whatever. That's it.
Gotcha. So we got boundaries, we got brief, and what's next?
Okay, so now we're going to get to the third B, which is now you're really starting to what I call it talk, because you're really starting to like maybe start asking for maybe you're starting to like have a negotiation. I call it a little bit of a negotiation. And so I call the last one bartering. And this is where I call it fluff for favor, vomit later. And you or ethically manipulating the manipulator. Okay. And so what you're doing is you are using what the narcissist wants, but for your own benefit. So if you want the narcissist to do something for you. You give them a little bit of what they want to get something of what you want in return. So what do they want? Well, they want adulation. They want, narcissistic fluffing, which is, where you're fluffing up their ego a little something. So you give them a little something, something, so you get a little something, something in return. And so, like, can you, help Johnny with his math homework? You're so much better at math than I am. He would benefit from it so much better if you did it. Something like that, so that you get something, and you just have to make sure you don't add any like tone, because narcissists hear tones like dogs hear whistles, like, like even if there's no tone, they hear tone. They're very easily slighted, right? So you have to be very careful about that. But that's why I say it, fluff for favor, vomit later, because like, you don't want to do it, I know, but it's just, you just very sparingly and strategically, right? But it's like, that way you're kind of getting a little something, and you get, and you're starting to like negotiate a little bit, right? And you're starting to move forward, and you realize that you are doing it in a powerful way to get something that you want. And you're realizing how you can be strategic and controlling, and how you are actually getting them to do something that you want on your terms.
Right.
And it's kind of cool how it starts to happen that way.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. When you see the results of being able to, kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, outsmart somebody, and be even more aware than they are of like what's going on. And yeah, being able to, I get it. So we've got boundaries, brief, and the last one, and bartering. And then I'm confused as to where we're at in our step journey.
That's it.
Are there more?
Those are your 3 steps. That's
Okay.
You've now like, you've stopped, you've started moving forward, and you started speaking, right? I mean, so those are your, like, you've really started to shift the dynamic that way. I mean, and so those are like the 3 most important steps. I mean, and obviously, the next step is really starting to slay, which is, through the slay program. And that's where I really start to teach people how to actually create the strategy, create the leverage, on a much more granular level. But really, if you just use those first 3 tricks, those are like very, very powerful ways to get started.
Yeah, no, I can see that. So, well, thank you for going through those with us. And I'm curious, could you share a little bit about how you came to do this work? Like, how did you get into what you do today?
Well, I mean, obviously I practiced law for 20 years, and I was doing this for a long time that way as far as negotiating. But then I also, after practicing law, I did a few entrepreneurial things. And I mean, I was still sort of practicing for a while. I don't practice now. I mean, I'm still a partner at a firm, but I do this work full time now. But I had one of the entrepreneurial ventures that I had was unfortunately with a narcissistic business partner.
Gotcha.
And it was just, and I had been speaking on negotiation all over the country. I had been the keynote for the American Business, American Bar Association. I had written a book on negotiation. I mean, I really had, I'd been on Extra, and I had written, best-selling books. I'd done all kinds of things, and I never even knew what a covert narcissist was. And then it ended up to be one of the most heinous, horrible, traumatic experiences of my life. I found myself in this situation where I was, this person was passive aggressive, was gaslighting me, I was confused about what was going on. I was waking up in the middle of the night. I was thinking about it. I was, talking to my husband. I was so confused. Flying monkeys were happening. I was like, I had this massive law practice. I'd had all this, these things had happened wonderfully in my life. And yet it was bringing up all this stuff from when I was a kid, and I had been bullied, and, like all these old feelings had been happening, started happening to me again. And I was like, it was just absolutely horrible, horrible. And a friend of mine who was a psychologist, I was telling him about it, and he said, oh, she's a covert narcissist, like without even like that. And I was like, what the hell is that? I never even heard that word before. And I said, I thought narcissists were men. And he was like, no. And I said, and what's a covert narcissist? What is that? And he said, oh, and he recommended some books. And I said, I got to get my hands on these books. And I was reading the books on the airplane, and I was like, my husband was next to me, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this is this person, this is crazy. And then I just started applying what I was reading to some of my cases, as I was still practicing law at the time. And it was almost like I had discovered penicillin. Like I was seeing immediate movement with narcissists, because I started really understanding the personality type in a way that I never had before. And at the time I was also learning about YouTube and funnels and all this other stuff. And so I did one video on how to negotiate with a narcissist, and all of a sudden it had like 1,000 views. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm onto something here. And that's how this journey started.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. It's so interesting, right? Like having gone through your own personal experience of the covert narcissist in your life. And yeah, when all those dots start to connect, when you realize like, oh my God, like, yeah, I totally know that experience of, you read all the characteristics or whatever, and you're like, oh, wow, this is exactly what.
I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I don't say that I'm glad that I went through it, but, I think that there's a reason I went through it, because it's one thing to represent them and feel empathy for people. It is another whole thing to have lived through it yourself. And I tell the story. I don't know how much time we have, but I'll just take 60 seconds, because so many of my followers and my community, they love my story because I tell it, and many tell it back to me of how I was on top of a mountain with my family, and I felt ill, like it was literally making me sick, this relationship with this business person, this business partner. I literally couldn't sleep. I was like sick because of this person. I hadn't slept for weeks. I was like obsessed with how sick this person was making me. And I was on vacation with my family in Hawaii, and we had gotten up in the morning to go watch the sunrise, and it was supposed to be this beautiful thing, and it was beautiful. And I was with my husband and my daughter, and I'm on vacation, and I'm up there, And my daughter, who's 17 at the time, she's like, "Oh, Mom, it's like heaven on earth." I'm like, "Yes, it is." And I'm up there and with the people that I love the most. And I'm up there, and suddenly this narcissist pops into my head, and I'm like, thinking about like what she was doing, and I thought, in that moment, I thought, "Oh, no, 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 no. You don't get to be here." No. I mean, it's one thing to like ruminate on it when I'm in my house or whatever, but no, you don't get to be here with me on vacation. No, like, no. And I realized in that moment that like I get a choice about my thoughts, and I realized in that moment, like, I'm not in creation mode if I get let this person like take over me. And I literally went down from that mountain, and I decided, like, that's it. Like, I got to get this person out of my life. I have to be done. And I decided to finish my negotiation book that I had already started. And I sent it out for testimonials. One of the people that I sent it out to was Robert Shapiro, who I didn't even know. And he wrote me back within 15 minutes, literally, and said, "Call me." And I called him, and he offered to write the foreword for the book, which he did. And after that, I started this YouTube channel, and literally magic started to happen, because I decided in that moment that I was going to be in creation mode, and that I was going to be in control of my life from that point forward. And that's it. Like, seriously.
Thank you. I'm so glad you shared that. That's awesome. In our past conversations, you'd never shared that story. And I realized that was great. So I hope that, I'm sure a lot of people listening or watching right now might have had that mountain moment, or they're about to have that mountain moment. But I love that. So thank you for sharing that vulnerable story. Let's talk a little bit about, before we wrap up, your gift and your Slay program. There's a couple of links below, buttons below, that link over to both of those. Can you share about those?
Yeah. So I have a free Crush My Negotiation prep worksheet. It is a 15-page ebook, and people have literally won their entire negotiations just on that. Is a really cool free gift. It is like amazing. It's not like just like a one pager. It's literally a 15-page, really very substantial freebie. And then my Slay program, which is stands for Strategy, Leverage, Anticipate, and Focus on You. And I designed it. It is the only negotiation program designed by an attorney that has an actual understanding of how a narcissist actually thinks. And that is also available for you guys. So
awesome.
That's that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And again, everyone, the links for both of those are below. Do you have any last insights before we wrap up?
Yeah. I mean, all I say to people all the time is that you and you alone define your value, and don't ever let the narcissist define your value. As I say all the time, that they are 100% the weaker one. They want you to think that you are the weaker one. They didn't attach themselves to you because you had so little value. They attached themselves to you because you had so much. That they only want sources of supply that have massive amounts of value. And so don't ever believe any different. And so you define your value, you have a massive amount. Don't ever believe any different. And today's a great day to start negotiating your best life. And today's a great day to start to slay. So Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciate your words, Rebecca. And thank you, AVAIYA students watching or listening, for showing up for yourself so courageously on this journey. And we will see you all again very soon. Take care. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this latest class with Rebecca Zung. She talked with us today about 3 tricks to having tough talks with toxic people. I thought this was a really great conversation because I love how Rebecca gives us a whole different perspective on talking with toxic people, narcissistic abuse, these kinds of relationships, because she's coming at it from the angle of, right, her experience as being a lawyer and her experience in negotiation in general, and then her own personal experiences of dealing with a covert narcissist in her business partnership world. So I think it's a great way of looking at things. And one of my favorite parts is really the first step that we talked about, which was just stop. Right? It's stop the conditioning and stop being on the defensive. So if you find yourself in this space, right, and you're still someone who's really defensive and defending yourself, and this person or these people are saying certain things, and you just keep defending yourself and all over and over and over again, right? More than likely, it's probably draining you. It's probably draining the life out of you, because being on defensive like that is such a difficult place to be in. So I really loved her recommendation of just stopping that, right? Really just stopping that, saying as little as possible, and just not going there, not right. Really, it's like taking the bait and being on the defensive, right? Why do you need to defend yourself against this person, right? So I thought it was a powerful thing to think about in your own journey if you're dealing with narcissistic trauma, dealing with narcissistic relationships, that kind of stuff, is that first step of just stopping that. So I hope that you enjoyed this class, everyone. We will see you again real soon. Take care.
AVAIYA has changed my life.
AVAIYA has made me the woman I am today.
AVAIYA is my home.
AVAIYA is personal freedom.
AVAIYA is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about AVAIYA.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, AVAIYA, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.